So, how do you talk about yourself and your art? Hi everyone. Welcome back to the Creative Exploration series. This week, I wanted to talk about something that a lot of artists find extremely difficult, and that's talking about yourself. And now, being able to talk about yourself and the work that you create is incredibly important in your career as an artist, because not only does it help you describe what you do to other people and kind of explain your work and your passion about what you do, but it helps you build a portfolio and a bio for if you're submitting work to a gallery or a shop. And it just helps you garner new jobs and new opportunities because you're able to get out there and convey your message to other people in a way that doesn't come off as pretentious or, just full of yourself. So the biggest thing that I've found in this process is just getting comfortable with the idea of talking about yourself. And that's not only with just friends and family, that's talking about yourself with strangers as well. And when you're comfortable about talking about yourself, you can express yourself more clearly and you're able to convey the meaning that you want to get across with not necessarily less words, but in a more direct manner. And if you're worried about this or nervous or self-conscious about any of this, you end up second-guessing yourself or stuttering over your words. You can end up being vague about your general message or your process. And really, worst of all, you can come off as arrogant and full of yourself. And I'll get more into that in a minute. So how do you do this just in general? And I've found that the first step you can take here is to distance yourself just a little bit from your art. And that doesn't mean that you need to be very vague and not specific, but just not talking about you yourself. You can talk about your project. So instead of saying, I'm working on my album, you can say, I'm working on this album. And now what that does is you're not talking about I and me anymore. You're talking about this. You're talking about an entity outside of yourself. And that doesn't put the focus on you anymore, because the focus shouldn't be on you in this case. The focus should be on your art. And I think that that's a really, really important distinction to keep in mind when you're talking about that stuff. And I think it really alleviates a lot of the major issues that might come across later on. And beyond this, it's important to talk about how other people think of your art rather than what you think. Because, and this might be a little detailed, but when you are talking about what you think about your art, you usually have this whole world built in your mind about it. And not all of that is really fully or directly explained inside of your art. And I think, anyway, that a lot of the joy of experiencing art is figuring that world out for yourself and inferring what the artist meant. So if you go into super detail about your art, I feel like that kind of, not only you can easily lose your audience when you're talking about that, but it kind of spoils some of it for the audience as well. And when you are talking to strangers about this, I feel like it is more important to go into details about what people generally think about it rather than what you specifically think about it. Now, obviously, if they ask you what your opinion is, or if they just want to get details from you, then go nuts. I mean, there's no reason to stop, but it's just kind of rein yourself in a little bit. And one of the other really important things that I found while thinking about this is being able to express the meaning of your art in a simple fashion. Now, what I mean by this is don't try to get pretentious or overly artsy with your descriptions. And what I mean by this is you should stick to the facts of the piece without really embellishing it. A good example of this is avoiding excessive adjectives. And not many people want you to talk about your art as, and I just made up a silly quote here, a beautiful expression of the delicately falling leaves of autumn. Rather, you can just say this piece expresses the falling leaves of autumn. Now, the first phrase sounds a lot better, but you have all those extra adjectives and all these flourishes that aren't really necessary, and it starts to feel like you're a little full of yourself. Now, really, this is subjective, and each person will have a different threshold for either what they're comfortable with or what they sound like when they say this. So it's good to practice this, but overall, it's really good to help keep things just plain and talk about it very directly. And now finally, it's just having confidence in what you're saying. And a lot of that comes down to what we've already talked about, being able to talk simply and plainly, but very openly and honestly about your art. It can go such a long way, just getting people's attention even. And it's totally okay to express yourself and your work when you talk about this, but don't worry about embellishing and building yourself up, because if you do embellish and build yourself up, you either come across as somebody who's really full of themselves or somebody who's not super confident in their art and they have to kind of make up for it somehow. And keep in mind when you're talking about yourself that your art is a part of you, but it isn't you. You and your art are different entities, and it's good to have some distance when you're talking about it. So you're able to keep it simple and keep it direct. So, do you have any thoughts to add on this topic? I will be reading and responding to comments below. If you found this video interesting, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel, because helping boost the signal really goes a long way for me. So, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Be remarkable.